Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Hope everyone is enjoying the sunshine. I don't know about you guys, but I'm going to say the spring weather is bringing out the mosquitoes. Wait, starting off this session, I think I now have like 15 mosquito bites on me, so you might hear a little scream somewhere in the middle of this presentation. Well, if this is your first time joining us, hello, my name is Sadie Raven. I'm the media producer for the Los Angeles Regional SBDC. The SBDC is a national program with over 1,000 locations across the country helping to stimulate economic growth through business advising and development. The LASBDC offers no-cost services through funding provided by the U.S. Small Business Administration, SBA, and from the California Office of the Small Business Advocate. It's your tax dollars at work. The Los Angeles Regional SBDC network operates 7 service locations throughout Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. Our services are also offered virtually. We are here to help. We empower small business owners by offering tailored solutions through personalized one-on-one business advising, cutting-edge workshops, and comprehensive programs, all provided at no cost. We are dedicated to supporting your entrepreneurial journey every step of the way. Hi, Lori. I just wanted to say hello to you. I'm
Oh,
literally like about to put myself on mute and just like my feet, these mosquitoes.
I hate mosquitoes, by the way. I'm allergic to them, and there's nothing worse in the world to me than mosquitoes. So I just wanted to make that announcement on my feelings about mosquitoes. Hello, everybody. Hello and welcome. Let's get started. We got a lot to go over today, as we always do. So let's go ahead and get rolling. Let me get my thing correct here. Okay, so first of all, Sadie's going to put the information in about the CFO series. This is the very last time this series will be offered. You'll get that in the chat. It starts this Friday, and get it or it's gone, I guess, as they say. Next week, we've got Sebastian coming on where he's going to talk all things funding your company. He's been on the show a couple times. Want to ask him how companies are getting funded, talk about some of those cash advance loans, talk about some of the other options that he sees available. Now, I have a home May lineup. I didn't include it yet. I'm filling a couple spots, but you'll see next week in our May lineup coming out. Now, for today's Lori's Corner, I'm going to talk about something. I got a little bit of a longer ramble than usual because I was really trying to express something. And if you listen closely, there's a lot of words of wisdom, and this is going to become a theme that I'm going to be playing upon for a little bit of time here. Okay, so welcome back, Small Biz Talk. It's time for Lori's Corner. Today, I want to talk to you about something that I've been noticing a lot lately, especially when I hear from, I'm going to say, the young entrepreneurs who've never worked inside a big company. Many of you are jumping straight into selling online. You're using Shopify, Etsy, Amazon, whatever the platform is. And what you think is the website or the app is all you need. So you set up a store, you list the product, and you expect the sales to roll in. But you're missing this invisible part, the invisible part that actually creates the customer experience, and that's infrastructure and processes. Now, over the last 10, 15 years, we've watched a quiet shift happen. Everyday reliability and thoughtful service has dropped, especially in the low to mid price range. I know I complain about it. I hear other complain about it. I know you've probably complained about it. In the low price range, pricing is very competitive. And the fact of the matter is, many small companies simply cannot make money in this price range. You try, but you can't. I see it all the time. Now, in the mid price range, customers expect better service and products. However, due to this lack of infrastructure, they often receive an outsourced maintenance, reactive fixes, and good enough effort. Now, I've got a new theory, guys. This is the Lori here at First for Lori. You know how that is. I believe that this is splitting our economy into kind of two different worlds. We've got what I'm calling the good enough economy. It's fast, cheap, automated, low accountability. Most day-to-day buying is starting to happen there. Then we got what I'm coining it. So if you hear it someplace else, this is Lori coined it first, the reliability excellence economy. This is smaller, it's more intentional, it's a little more expensive. This is where the proactive systems, careful communication, and full ownership of the processes still exist. Now, this reliability excellence economy is where you get the good customers, okay? This is where you want to be. This is where you make more money. And this is where actually companies are making the most money. So here's what's happening, and I'm seeing it with a lot of online sellers. Because you've never seen the infrastructure behind a well-run business, you assume that the platform handles everything. So you skip building real processes, inventory tracking, quality control, fulfillment, customer service systems, follow-up, returns. What's the result? The customer gets this mediocre experience. So they may buy once, but they don't come back and they don't pay premium prices and they don't tell their friends. So, this lack of infrastructure, I believe, is quietly trapping you in the good enough tier. You end up competing on price instead of quality, and you can't charge what your product or service is actually worth. So, many companies, I believe, have become quite successful recognizing the lack of the infrastructure in the smaller companies. Okay, where am I going with this? Okay, love them or hate them, Amazon. I've always noticed since Amazon became big, many decades ago, I guess, that they're an infrastructure company. They're always been an infrastructure company. Their return policy, their excellence in customer service, many people, and I got to say, I admit, myself included, I will buy from Amazon rather than buying from a small company direct because I want that comfort. I want to know that I'm getting what I bought, what I'm wanting, and I want to know I can get, taken care of if it's not, right? And so who is actually paying for this that I'm getting from Amazon? It's the sellers on Amazon that are having to sell at a discount. That's who's paying for this. You're actually paying for your own lack of infrastructure. And it's locking the small companies into this price war. Now, the flip side is very powerful. When you intentionally build the systems and processes, you create reliability, clear communication, consistent quality, fast and fair problem solving, you move into the excellence economy. Customers notice. They're willing to pay more because they trust you. Your repeat business goes up, your referrals go up, your profit margins get healthier. So here's the bottom line I'm trying to say. Your platform is just the storefront, okay? The infrastructure and processes you build behind it are what actually determine whether you stay stuck in the good enough or you step into excellence. Young entrepreneurs, this is one of the biggest advantages you can give yourself. Learn to build the systems early. It's not glamorous, but it's what separates the businesses that thrive from the ones that just survive. Okay. You got it. Slow down, build the foundation right, and you'll be able to charge what your work is truly worth. Okay. Let's jump into today's show. I'm so excited to bring Xiomara Palma back. I don't even know the numbers of times I have her on the show, but if I have somebody on the show that minds many times, they are good. She is the founder and CEO of Solvit HR, a boutique, lost my spot there for a second, a boutique HR consultancy built specialty for small businesses. With over 15 years, Xiomara, I've known you too long. You're going to have to update that. Of hands-on experience, Xiomara is a certified HR consultant who has worked across a wide range of industries, helping business owners navigate the complexities, very complex too, I must say, of compliance while boosting their profitability through their people's productivity. She brings a fresh perspective to human resources. She's not just about policies and handbooks. She's about building workplace cultures that are legally sound, operationally efficient, and generally empowering for both employers and employees. Legally sound is really striking me lately because I'm dealing with a lot of clients that are not legally sound. Welcome.
Well, yeah, thank you, Lori. Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here with you. And definitely, yeah, I get to see a lot of that as
Yeah,
well on my
it's
end.
interesting. Do you feel sometimes I feel like I never would have thought like what I do for a living, maybe the tax side's a little bit, but what I've done do for a living and HR would feel like you're in the middle of a battlefield. Do you feel like you're kind of in a battlefield now where you really didn't think you were going to be? Do you feel that way sometimes?
Yes, I do feel that way. But what I do get to see is actually the business owners being in the battlefield, and it's
Yeah.
actually me that kind of comes and provides all the like you were saying, all the structure, the systems and processes so they can actually get through it and avoid that battlefield eventually.
Yeah, and it's interesting being in the back seat, if you will, while you're experiencing it through your clients. Sometimes at the end of the day, I got to kind of shake it off because I feel like after so many calls, like I'm nervous, like I'm in trouble. It's like after you deal with it, you're like, oh my God, am I not? No, no, that's them, not me. It's a very scary thing to see so many people experiencing it. So today we're going to do a whole lot of things, guys. One of them I want to kind of go through. I have to always go through AB5. I'm sure you're hearing it where people don't know what AB5 is, or they think they're excluded through the voting they did. And so I feel like every time out of responsibility, I've got to bring up what AB5 is. And I also want to introduce, and I mentioned that you were going to talk about this. A lot of people, and you probably know this too, have no concept about the statewide requirement for the independent contractor contract, or what I don't know if they call it anything specific, but those are two topics that we need to discuss because I feel like many in our audience can be experiencing it. So I think we need to start out with AB5 because it kind of makes the independent contractor contract null and void for so many people. So I know you've got this memorized. You probably wake up in the middle of the night and are dreaming it. I have to believe you do. So I'm going to ask you the famous question. So, Laura, what is AB5?
Here we go, Lori.
Here we go. Do
So
the dance.
yeah, AB5 is the law that passed right before COVID, when came into our lives. So it went through January 1, 2020, and it really was all over the news right before COVID kind of just took over everything. But what AB5 did is it made it really difficult to classify someone as an independent contractor. And when I say made it really difficult, it's almost like impossible. So it created a new test. So there was always a test to determine whether someone would be an employee or they would be an independent contractor. And that was known as the Borrello test, something that was in effect since the 80s. But then what AB5 did, it created a new test. And it said, okay, we're going to keep the Borrello test, but now we're creating a new test. And this new test, there's three prongs that people have to meet in order to be considered an independent contractor. And when they don't meet those three prongs, then they have to go by the Borrello test. So all those, there's a lot of occupations that are exempt from AB5, but they're not exempt from the Borrello test, if you will. So AB5 created these three prongs. So one is that the employer cannot have control over the work being performed. Two is that they have to be outside the line of business as the business. So for example, if it's a marketing agency, you can't have like a social media influencer as an independent contractor, right? I mean, it's like part of your operations. And the third prong is essentially um, this business needs to either be already in business, so like having a business license and they have their own clients and stuff, or they have to be in an occupation, like for example, like a real estate agent, right? They're like a licensed occupation. So if people don't fall into those three categories, they don't meet all three, not just one, but all three, then if they don't meet that, then they are automatically classified as an employee, right? If they are exempt from AB5, which, like I said, there's a lot of positions that are exempt, like HR consultants exempt, real estate agents are exempt, right? But they're not exempt from the Borello test. So what that means is that, okay, we look at AB5, they're exempt. Okay, let's scratch that. But now let's go through the Borello test and see if this person actually qualifies as an independent contractor. So that's what that law did. It made it really nearly impossible to have someone as an independent contractor.
Yeah, and how I feel, and I'm very clear about that. I think this is the worst, most damaging law I have ever seen passed because the others you can kind of work around a little bit, if you will. But the whole way that a person who starts a company can grow is bring on an independent contractor to fill in on those spare times. I remember the first person was a yoga instructor and was teaching at this small little studio she rented and just simply wanted to offer a weekend course. And she couldn't unless she did it as a, part-time temporary employee. And all of a sudden that expense just goes through the roof that she had no choice. She ended up closing it down and just offering some classes at her home. So it just seems like it just really creates a difficult pathway to leap to even try hiring an employee, because how do you get to that point? You usually don't have enough profitability to jump in being an employee. So you've got the situation like I just spoke of with no infrastructure. You're in a price war. You can't get an independent contractor because why are you buying it or paying for an independent contractor? Because you're doing something in the daily course of business. And a lot of people don't realize what you pointed out. It's and they go, well, they're a company. Well, it's and they're still doing the daily course of business. So this one I think was real damaging. Now, when it first came out, like you said, it was kind of sidelined by COVID. I remember right before COVID, they were going to go after people really hard. What I had seen then is mostly it was caught because of EDD. The independent contractor actually was applying for unemployment insurance, especially during COVID, and that's how they found it. I haven't seen too many just knocking on door to door, but I have seen a lot of incorrect forms. But it seems like, and I'm going to let you take over from here, we're starting to see, and I'm not in it like you are, but it seems like there's an uptick in them going after and taking going after situations or being more aggressive and now engaging in the law. It doesn't seem like it's hidden in the background anymore. They're getting more proactive about it. Give us kind of a what's happening in the street view, if I can say that, and what you're experiencing.
Yeah, so what I'm seeing is, I don't necessarily see like the independent agencies that are in charge of enforcing this, like coming after businesses or, auditing companies just because of independent contractors. It typically gets, it typically is part of like another situation, right? And I will say this, it becomes an issue because I would say most small businesses, I mainly work with small businesses. So most small businesses do have their workers classified as independent contractors.
Yeah.
And so when it becomes an issue is when, for example, you have an independent contractor that goes to apply for unemployment insurance or disability insurance, or maybe they're pregnant and they're going to be applying for pregnancy disability. And they apply with like EDD, right? The Employment Development Department, who's in charge of collecting all the payroll tax and in charge of distributing these benefits, right? Pending that the person that is applying has contributed to the benefits, right? So that's
Right.
what they check for. And so when someone applies and they're like, oh, wait a minute, Xiomara Palma is applying for unemployment insurance, but she hasn't contributed to, this employer hasn't contributed to unemployment. They're not even registered with us. And that's how it gets started. I was
Yeah.
right before our we went live, I was mentioning I'm currently dealing with a client that had someone hired as an independent contractor, this person actually asked them to hire them as an independent contractor. And once they were hired, she went and she applied for unemployment insurance, right? They didn't have anything because, like you said, they didn't know, right? This is a small operations. They actually are a nonprofit. They're trying to do a good deed. And because they didn't know what processes they needed, what systems they needed, they went and hired people without really, knowing what they were getting themselves into. Um, and so then an EDD came after them, right? Then the employee filed a lawsuit against them for misclassifying them because they didn't qualify for unemployment. And check this out. Now, after EDD, the labor commissioner just came and showed up at their door and said, I'm auditing you. Give me the last 3 years of your payroll records, timekeeping records, everything like business license. Give me like employee demographics, even people that you have classified as independent contractors, copies of the pay stubs. Uh, at that point, it's like, they're going to get it because they just didn't have anything in place.
And that's scary. I've dealt with EDD on behalf of my clients, and it's not fun. And, a lot of people don't realize any of those fines or judgments against you is a civil liability. It's not like you can just people go, I just shut down the company. No, that comes under civil liability. And so you don't walk away from that. And that's where you see somebody innocently starting a small company, not having the respect about all of these rules or the knowledge of it. And then suddenly they're in these big court cases that they had not signed up for. Before I forget, one of the things that, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Xiomara, because I remember learning this and I was quite surprised. I knew that you go to EDD when you hire an employee and you register. I knew that. But what I didn't realize is they want you to also register when you have an independent contractor. Am I correct on that? How many people are literally aware of that or even doing it,
No one. No one.
I would think not. But what I'm finding, and this is Lori being Lori, is that there's these different things that are coming into play, like register your independent contractor. This got revoked, but it was going to be where Venmo transactions were going to be getting a 1099K as little as 500. It revoked. It's now 20,000, but it was going that way. So I'm seeing these little forms and tie-ins that are getting a little bit more easy to trace when you have an independent contractor as well. And it's not like you said, somebody doesn't come into your home and notice it. It's these little forms or somebody actually filling out some kind of form that gets you caught.
Yeah.
So it's not a good day on that. And like a lot of times too, and I hear this, I got two things I want to make sure I remember to ask you, is that people feel as though the number 3, I called it the bona fide company. I don't know if they call that in the terms or not. But if somebody is a bona fide company and they're in business, et cetera, that will allow them to hire them, even if it's the normal course of business. And I want to add this on. From a legal structure standpoint, I am seeing individuals being forced to form LLCs because they want to get a customer and the customer is saying you must be an LLC. I know they're doing it to circumvent what they believe AB5. So I know I haven't lost you. You always follow up with me on these things, but this is the crux now. Not only do you have this company trying to tell somebody who just started their own little sole prop that they got to now pay the expense of being an LLC, it's not protecting them anyway. It doesn't circumvent it. And then I see the person start the LLC, not realizing they have to pay the 800, and then they're getting letters from the government. I'm seeing it on both sides. You followed me, right?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I see it too on my end, and I feel like independent contractors or classifying people as independent contractors is really going to get, I don't know, it's bound to get you in trouble at some point,
Yeah.
So this is what small businesses need to be aware of, because how I see it starting is, you're a small operations, you're a solopreneur, you're working diligently to get your business off the ground, and then it starts going, right? Like, oh, okay, I'm getting sales, I'm getting more clients, I need someone to help me. I can't do it all by myself. Oh, I'm gonna hire, so and so, Joe Schmo, and I'm gonna pay them via Venmo or Zelle or PayPal or cash,
Right.
whatever it is, not realizing all these agencies, or all these triggers that may come down the road, right? You're focused on making sales and making money. And then down the road, it's like if you get hit with a claim, you get hit with an audit, there goes your profits, there goes all your sales. So it goes back to your point, Lori. I've heard you say this before, like you're better off, not hiring people as of yet, or whatever, as long as you can, right? Making more money than when you do hire people. Couple things. Like when you do hire people, you need to make sure that you know, or you hire someone that knows all the ins and outs and all the responsibility that comes with hiring people, because that it either can make it or break it. It can make or break your business, right? Like if you hire people the right way, you have the right processes, you are able to retain people, you're not constantly dealing with turnover or having to manage them on a day-to-day, you're gonna kill it. You're gonna make money, you're gonna have a great team, your business is going to take off. But if people don't do their homework up front to know the responsibility, the regulations, the requirements, and to know how to manage employees, right? So the requirements are one component, just one of a few components, but it's also the knowing how to manage people, knowing how to motivate and keep a team, knowing how to create a great workplace culture for everybody, right? And that's going to mitigate the liability too. Those are the components that as an employer, people need to master, because it's one thing to hire people. You don't do it the right way, you're going to have constant turnover, which means you're going to be paying payroll tax, right? And it's just going to be draining your money. You're not, and this is the thing, like with HR, it's so hard to pinpoint or figure out where you're losing money, because it's not like a tangible, you know what I mean? It's not like something tangible, like a line item on the budget that you can see, like, oh, this is how much, like, the lack of motivation is costing me. This is how much, like, the lack of productivity is costing me. These are things like you have to figure out, like it's going to impact your operations, and it's going to creep up on you if you don't do your homework from the beginning.
Absolutely. There's so much to unpack that you said. I had to get out my pen and paper to try to make notes so I could go back to each point. I want to start out with, you know, 10 years, I would say as little as 10 years, but definitely 15 years ago, I would have actually said in a very small organization, okay, wait till listen to those sentences. I would have said HR is not a requirement. I would have said that. You can get away with no HR. I would have said that, right? That's not true. It's a necessity. In fact, it's even more so important because you're so unaware of the rules. The way that the laws have changed, now HR is a necessity right from the beginning. That's one point I want to make. Now, the interesting part, and like I said, I'm not in agreement of this law. I think it is what it is, though. I don't see it going away, but it becomes really a serious thought, consideration, and question as to how a company can even grow. Because if you start the company, and going back to paying in cash and paying independent contractors, and I'm not making any moral, ethical, or legal statements here, I'm making a financial one. This is my CFO hat, right? Xiomara, they don't plan the selling price and the financials on the company on ever being able to pay for an employee. They get locked into that discounted cash price. I see where they then are getting to where they have to turn those people into employees. They couldn't have afforded them as employees back then, and they definitely can't now. They can't grow. they back themselves in a corner is what I'm saying for
Mhm.
CFO financial reasons. And that's where it's better off to start a company where you're charging a high enough profit that you have money to reinvest and you have less clients. And see, that's where I say that focusing on sales and revenue, which is what all the social media and marketing people focus on, and what all the small companies, they don't want to talk about finance. That's not sexy and fun. What about that new marketing? It's amazing to me. And but what is really so true is if the finance is not in place from the very beginning, which I do not see in 99% of the companies, you cannot get to that next level because you are never going to afford to hire. And now the laws are forcing you to hire even more so. In my private business where I work with like 10 to 60 million usually, unless I'm doing just one-on-one trainings, they've got the infrastructure and they grew incrementally, but they grew at a time that I hate when I say that has been, but it was a little easier then than it is now.
Mhm.
So I don't know how the small companies will get from here to here with their current understanding and methodology, in not realizing that they got to charge sufficient pricing to be able to afford to even grow from the very beginning. Otherwise, they back themselves into a corner.
Mhm.
Comments on that? I just said a whole lot. I know I did, as always. Comments
You
on
said a whole lot. I didn't take notes. I'm sorry. So,
that.
but you touch on if I miss anything. But I feel like people need to understand, like business owners need to understand the cost, the payroll cost or the labor cost from the beginning, because that's not something that gets factored in, as you said. That's they can't really afford it. Like, so we're talking about what that labor cost is. We're talking about workers' comp insurance. We're talking about payroll taxes. So here in California, employers have to pay unemployment insurance tax that can be anywhere from 3.4% up to 6-ish%, depending on how many claims, right? Like just works like just any insurance. The more claims you have, the higher the rate's going to be. And then you have to factor in also tax. You pay that tax on the first $7,000 of employee wages. So this is where the turnover comes into effect, because if you're constantly hiring, like say you hire someone, they've been with you for like 4 or 5 months, you got past that $7,000 threshold, and then they leave. Now you got to hire someone new and start over again, paying for that payroll tax. And so if you constantly have turnover, you never get over the hump of like having to pay for the, for the tax. But yeah, so those are some of the taxes. There's training, there's employee training tax, that's 1%. And then I know I'm leaving one out, but then comes also the cost of doing payroll too. Like you're gonna want to hire someone or outsource the payroll part, unless you feel that you're savvy enough with all the wage and hour laws to master, compensating them properly. And this is the area that gets the most litigations out there. It's the compensation part, the weight, getting the correct rates, getting the correct meal periods. Gosh, that's there's always a lawsuit every year, something about the meal periods. It seems like basic things, but it's really more complex than what it seems, you know.
It does. And, I'm going to add on to the outsourcing of the payroll. And you're absolutely correct on following the labor laws. But in addition to it, is getting the correct tax forms and the processes of the payroll. I do not believe anyone should use a QuickBooks or a Gusto even. I'm not even big on Gusto, to be honest with you, when you have employees, because if you don't get all those forms in that payroll correct, that's once again a civil liability. I have a client that used QuickBooks, didn't report two of the taxes properly, and now has a lien and a civil liability fraud lawsuit against them. And it was just a mistake, but that
Yeah.
doesn't matter, right? And so I don't think a lot of times people understand that there's an infrastructure that is also required the minute you bring an employee on, beyond just what the payroll taxes are. They talk about the payroll taxes, they realize those, but they don't realize the other costs, even with the employee handbook and the trainings. And isn't there some new trainings that are now required also for small companies or something along that line?
Yeah, so there's sexual harassment training for those to have. So it's a little bit tricky. Well, the way I interpret it, right? Um, it's for those, the law says for those that have at least 5 employees. And then, but that 5 employee count is tricky because anyone that works or interacts in the workplace counts towards that count. So business owners count, third parties count. Like, for example, if I were to be like an HR consultant, third party somewhere, I would count. And interns count, you know, just as long as you have 5 people in the workplace that interact, like the FedEx guy that comes on a daily basis counts.
No,
That's
tell me that's not true.
yes. Yeah, you have to give them the policy. You have to give them the policy and say, hey, these are the expectations. These are things like most people don't talk about. But yeah, and then the discrimination laws apply at the one employee count. So because sexual harassment is considered a type of discrimination, the way I look at it is like it applies even if you have one employee. But again, I mean, technically the law says 5, but could they push for, like, even if you have 2 employees? Probably. They could probably find another different way to say, oh, this was a wrongful whatever termination. This was, being harassed because of my race or whatever it may be. So
Right. And you know something, and tell me if you're seeing this. What I find is that, I'm seeing it mostly with people not setting up their legal structure properly. So where you have EDD, I'm having Franchise Tax Board coming after a lot of people. And
mhm.
that's the association that I'm dealing with mostly. But what I'm finding is they do not take any consideration into the fact that this is a small company. They are go after the small companies the same
Mhm.
as the big companies. In other words, people think, well, I'll just let them know I didn't know. No, they're as aggressive with the smaller companies. It's like there's no change. So I'm trying to say that these to the small businesses, you don't get a get out of jail free permission card
Yeah.
in organizations. Are you seeing the same with EDD?
Yeah. Yeah, it's no excuse. It's kind of like the IRS, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
you can't pull the, oh, I didn't know, or it was a mistake, or it's gonna be a costly mistake now. But same thing with like the regulatory agencies that enforce employment regulations. They just, if you have one employee, I mean, they're still gonna come after you as if you were like a large corporation, you know.
Yeah.
And when they audit, like this one client I have going through the labor commissioner audit, they ask for all the business structure documents, like business license, give us your articles of incorporation, give us this, because
Wow.
they want to know all the people that are involved in the business to go after them, right? So they want to
Ah,
know, is Xiomara in business with Lori? Are okay, they're both responsible now. And yeah, they're gonna go, they're gonna go all in.
yeah, and
There's no
it's really
there's no
interesting. On a total side note, I keep getting this craziness coming to me lately where people have incorporated in Wyoming because it's sold on social media that you don't have to put your name down and so you hide, but they don't fail to realize that then when you're in California, you have to do foreign entity and the name's on the documents there. So they get double whammy with fees and fines and penalties, but it goes back to the fact that they'll always be able to track you down. There is no hiding as if you think, but they do. They want to know exactly who is all
Mhm.
involved in that. I want to go into the independent contractor, but something that just struck me. I was thinking about the fact that we talked about it before the show. So many people don't even have an awareness of these laws we're speaking of. They don't come into the show or something, they don't even find out about them. And I was thinking to myself, how is it that 10 years ago, even a small company had more awareness of the laws than they do today? And I'm thinking, and this is a brand new thought popped in my head tomorrow, probably because we all belong to some kind of business association or some organization we were involved in. We were either came from corporate America, where we had a background at least enough to know it could exist, or we were involved in some kind of chamber and they had tons of policies and newsletters we got. And I think the smaller entrepreneur who's selling online in their own little world, but engaging in these activities that make them, reliable and responsible, aren't getting that type of information presented because you don't see it on the news. You're not seeing it on YouTube, you're not seeing it on X. So that's why they go away not knowing about all this, which is really kind of an interesting thought I just had.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's really not enough information being disseminated, for
Yeah.
the masses to really know. I will tell you one thing though, employees are very savvy these days with the employment laws.
Interesting.
More so than the business owners. So
Really?
isn't that isn't that scary? Yes.
That is. So I know this probably isn't the right word, but it's the only one I can think of. But they're kind of like becoming a weapon because they know. And you know what, Tamara? It's not, I can see that because I've had people whose employee have filed for EDD, knowing that then they can get a lawsuit as an independent contractor and they can get compensated for everything, the overtime and everything. So you're right. I've seen a few of those as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, and also for workers' comp too.
Yes.
I knew of a company where they hired someone. This person worked for 3 days and injured themselves, and it was out on leave for like months, 5 months, litigated. I mean everything. It's just
Wow.
it all comes, I'm gonna tie it all back to what you're saying, the processes and systems in place. Because if you don't have a process to hire the right people, you're gonna hire anyone and anyone that can bring liability to your business.
Yeah.
So it really is an art to once you're ready to hire people, it really is an art to manage the people operation.
Yeah, it really, really is. I have some private clients that they've been my clients for years who won't hire anybody unless they have me do a final interview. Can you believe I still do that with interviewing with people on that?
Mhm.
So let's go into this independent contractor contract. What I got to say, I still don't get it. There's two things, and I don't have the details, so you'll fill them in, but there's two things that I just don't even understand. One is, do I have to do this even if I bring somebody in to fix my computer? Number one. Number two, of course, I always have my pet peeves.
Mhm.
My understanding is that if I hire somebody and they don't do a job and I decide not to pay them because they didn't do the job and we have to discuss it, that independent contractor can take me to the government for not paying in 30 days, which is crazy talk. So, okay, fill in and tell me where I may be wrong on my understanding. Okay.
Okay, so this is for freelancers. Okay,
Yep.
so this is for all the people are like, for
You
example,
can't
uh,
hire as a freelancer. Let's make that
up
clear. The ones you can't.
Upwork. Yes. So the agreement, right? So there's a requirement that if you're gonna hire a freelancer, they're gonna work for you for a few months at least, that there must be a contract in place, outlining the scope of work and outlining the rate of pay and outlining the payment date. And if there's no payment date, then by default, it is assumed under the law that you're going to pay them within 30 days of them completing the work. So that's essentially, those are the most important components of the contract. But yeah, you as an employer, you have to have a written contract with the freelancer. And how this came about, Lori, was because, as you know, during COVID, like most people went online virtually, and there was like an influx of like freelancers, people that just went online to get paid, but there were issues that they were experiencing too in getting paid. And so the law said, okay, well, because independent contractors don't have many, or didn't, let me rephrase that, didn't have many protections under the law, right? That's why it's so penalized heavily when people misclassify workers, because as an independent contractors, they don't have many benefits. They don't have many protections. And so when they were finding that they were being misclassified, they were issuing a lot of penalties. But what was happening was that a lot of these freelancers or independent contractors weren't being paid or weren't being compensated. And then they couldn't go back to get compensation because they were like, well, there's no agreement. There's nothing written. Sorry, you did free work. And so that's how this law came about. But some you were touching on some of the implications or some of the consequences of not compensating them within the 30 days or not compensating them according to the agreement. So there are some routes that they can take. They can file a claim. They can file a claim now, and now it is penalized based on like the amount that they are owed. So if it's something around $900-ish, I think there is a fine of up to, I can't remember the exact number, but there are two amounts. If it's something like between like about $900, there's a fine. If it's something beyond $2,000 or $2,500, there's even the potential of jail time for 1 year. So
tell me,
I hate to be the bearer of bad news. Why you put me on that spot, Lori?
I know. It blows my mind. It comes back to, I like living in Lori's world, Lori's magic fairy dust world. But in my world, it's like if you got hired as an independent contractor and you didn't have a contract and you didn't get paid, well, shame on you, learn how to make a contract. And when the government tries making us safe for everything, I think that's when problems come. I always say you cannot regulate or put government rules under mortality or ethics. I think that it just becomes too challenging. But aside from that, where I want to go with this is, if these penalties are assessed, who is assessing them? Because see, I think of the way that it's always worked is you took them to a small claims court. If it was under 10,000, about 6,000 average, depending on the jurisdiction in California. And if it was over that amount, you took them to court, and then usually a decision's made up to the invoice amount, or it has to have a gross negligence or a product liability to go over the invoice amount. That was the world I lived in. Who is claiming this? Can the independent contractor sue them in a small claim court and get this fined?
They could. Yeah, they could.
This is a different agency applying the fine. It's not going through the courts, right?
So yeah, so there are a couple venues, a couple agencies. So there is the Labor and Workforce Development Agency. They are the main ones in charge of enforcing AB5. But in recent years, the responsibility to investigate was also extended to the Attorney General. So now even the Attorney General can go after people and investigate.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy because, it just takes so much to this level that's down here at such a small amount. It's really, really kind of crazy. Okay. In the time we got, I want to bring up staffing agencies. And I think you can understand why. Because to me, that is, and I'm open for more workarounds, but that's the only one I'm seeing is a staffing agency. Now, in the past, I've always steered away from staffing agencies because it was perceived they were more expensive. I'm starting to question that may not be true anymore. Have the rules changed? And I know that there's this, I don't know the word, but it's like a co-ownership of an employee or some kind of weird phrase like that.
Co-employment.
Yeah, I know it was something. So
Yes.
can we talk about staffing agencies and this co-ownership employment thing, and if this is an option for small companies and how this works?
Yeah, so that is an option, an alternative, I would say. Like if you don't want, you're not ready to actually fully hire someone or know if you're able to afford them for the long term, um, or even bring them on as an independent contractor, you can go through a staffing agency and hire a temp, right? And they will take care of the workers' comp side of things. They will take care of the payroll, timekeeping stuff. They will take care of some of the compliance stuff. So the sexual harassment training component of it, all the basic trainings that are supposed to be provided to the employees, workplace violence prevention training. Now that's mandatory too. If you have an employee that's facing the public and the employer has at least 10 employees. But if you don't want to deal with that or you don't have the budget for it, you can go through the staffing agency to do so. Now, there's still a little bit of liability that comes along with that because obviously the employee is considered their employee, but you are considered kind of like a co-employer because you're providing the work environment for the employee. So the employees coming on site, and that is where the liability comes for the small business, right? So making sure that you are adhering by sexual harassment requirements, the employees not being harassed, um, wage and hour, they being provided their meal periods on time or they're taking them on time. There is still a little bit of liability, but not as much as if you had hired them yourself. So
Now,
that
can I
could,
use a staffing agency and circumvent AB5? Like, say I'm a marketing company, can I use a staffing agency to hire social media influencers and stuff?
you could, yeah. I
Okay,
mean,
that's what I
yeah,
thought. Yeah.
you could
Okay.
if you were looking to hire like a social media manager, you could go through the staffing agency. Now, you're not going to do this for the long term. It's not sustainable for the long term. Like, years and years of you hiring someone through a staffing agency, right? Then at some point, now it becomes kind of like, okay, you're kind of fully liable for it. So staffing agencies could work anywhere from between like, I'd say like 6 months to 9 months.
Okay.
Um, after that, I mean, you probably want to hire those people because,
Well, and that's why it could be a bridge because if you're kind of close, but you got profits because you built in profitability on your business model to begin with,
yeah,
you have the profits there, right? You pay, I don't know, I haven't done any math, but it may be about the same. Who knows by the time you
yeah,
look at it, right?
they are
Um,
expensive. They
they
are.
are expensive. They totally are. But when I think about if you have no payroll, you got to get a payroll person, you got to get an HR. It'll be interesting to sometime we'll have to get together and do the math on that. That would be a
Mhm.
fascinating
Yeah,
analysis. I would love to do that. But
let's
nevertheless,
do
you
it.
could have the staffing agency carry the weight, if you will, of the hiring to build up your infrastructure to get to a point where you're making enough to bring somebody on. To me, that is the only, jump I can see in the
Yeah.
growth if you but you have to have the profits, see, that's why I said everything comes down first and foremost to a financial decision. It
Mhm.
really does. It absolutely does.
Yeah, I would love to get to go through the numbers with you because like I said, a lot of these things are not like line items on like a budget. It's like training costs, right? Like okay, so now we got to go through training costs,
Right.
or maybe the cost of turnover, like who's picking up the slack. What's the cost to your staff or to yourself for like not having a position that filled, and everyone else is doing the work. I'm going to say the other alternative would be to hire people and do it the right way. And by doing the right way, I mean like have the infrastructure, right? Like from the moment you are recruiting for the position, you have the structure, you're having an employee handbook, or you have the policies, you are intentional about the kind of company culture you want to create. You also are providing or ready to provide the training this new person is going to need to get them up to par on what their job is going to be, but also to retain them eventually. Because when people feel lost in the job, it just it causes them to it just becomes very vague for them, and they lose interest and they will leave. So that's where I see a lot of turnover too. And also what I see a lot of turnover too is like the management is not trained properly to manage the employees. And the employees either start leaving a lot, or you see a lot of workers' comp claims, which is workers' comp is going to be like the highest cost
Yeah.
for an employer. So you want to get those things right from the beginning. You're providing like whatever Cal OSHA requirements are for the trainings for you. Make sure your staff is not having injuries that could have been preventable. And, those are all the costs of like managing and hiring people. But I would love to like really get down to the nitty gritty of the actual numbers, or the percentages
Yeah.
with you, Lori, because I feel like people need to see that in order to value HR, because a lot of times they think like, oh, HR doesn't apply to me. No,
Right. Right.
it
It
does.
does.
If it doesn't apply, if you think it doesn't apply to you, it's actually going to apply to your budget
Yeah,
eventually.
it does. Yeah, we'll have to look at it. And it's interesting because what you talked about is when the manager can't manage. Now, in my private company, I go back to my private company, I did a lot of turnaround. So I would go into companies that were in trouble, figure out how to turn them around and make them successful as the CEO or CFO. And a lot of them, I couldn't get any money. That's probably part of the problem. We couldn't get bank loans or anything. They had gotten to a point of having a loss. Now, I was quite successful at it. And the actual secret to why I succeeded so much was this infrastructure and employee management that we're talking about. And what I found is that when the small companies grew and added on people, and even if they got up to like a 10 million, the employees just haphazardly created all the processes because nobody handed them a process. So suddenly you looked at the company, and I would just spend the first month sometimes interviewing and observing, standing in the corner and watching. And just to explain it real simple, I would see things like this. Everybody emailed each other freely and they copied in 10 employees. I got 10 employees reading what only one should be reading. One company, I literally made little departments and said, you communicate to the supervisor, you only communicate to the supervisor. Put in those processes, we could get rid of 5 people. I mean, it was unbelievable. So it goes into this concept that when people come on board, if you don't have infrastructure and processes to handle something and explain how it's done, it becomes, I called it the spaghetti drawing. It was just like the spaghetti drawing. And that is a huge cost to the company.
Mhm. Yeah, because not everybody's and not every, we want everybody to be working towards the goal of the
Yeah.
company, right? Like the mission, the vision, that's the goal. And everybody needs to pull towards that. But if you don't have like the right leadership, kudos to you that you were able to spot on and bring efficient processes of ways of doing things. But a lot of people don't. And a lot of people, and especially in the small business community, they will promote someone that has mastered like a level of competency in their job to like manager or supervisor. But a lot of times they are not people.
Yeah.
And they are like, they are not the greatest to handle employee relations. And, to manage your workforce, that is a different skill you need to have to have a manager that has that skill to
Yeah,
deal with people.
another thing I would see is the entrepreneurs that are scattered and not disciplined and want to chase the biggest shiny metal thing that they think comes up next. They pass that on to their staff. I remember this one company, it was about 20 million that I was working in. The CEO was driving me up a wall, and I had to explain to him one day. I said, now picture that your employees are troops on a battlefield. We're calling the battlefield the marketplace, et cetera, right? And these troops have only so many reserves, right? They got so much water, so much food. I was trying to explain this to him. I go, now I want you to say that you come in this morning and you go, troops, get over on that hill. That's where we got to go. And they run all over to the hill. And then when they get on that hill, you go, no, it's this hill over here. And they run over the hill. I said, nobody is going forward because they're running between all the hills and you are just wearing everybody out. And then they're
Yeah.
leaving and we're not getting anywhere. Stop telling people to run on different hills.
Yeah.
You got it. But
Yeah.
that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, that's what it comes, that's what it comes to. That's where I talk about policies because I know we're running out of time. I just want to make the point, like if you don't have policies in place, I have this client that said, "Oh, I hired this one employee and then she was supposed to be a tutor, right? She's supposed to be tutoring the students, and then he's like, well, she tutors them, but then she waits for them to like ask her questions, and she's just sitting there going through her phone." And I'm like, well, did you have do you have a policy? Do you
Yeah.
have like a cell phone use policy? No. Was part of the job requirement that she needed to be proactively asking, the students for questions and walking through? No. So that's what I mean. You are going to get what you ask for. And when you don't ask for things, you're going to get a lot of junk that you have to sort through, and it's going to waste your time. It's going to waste a lot of time, energy, and effort. So yeah, definitely going up and down hills.
Yeah, we could talk just forever on so many topics, but what I really loved, and I'm going to pass it to you for final words. What I really loved is we showed and drilled down and looked behind the scene to see when we're talking about HR and AB5, we're not just talking about laws and government agencies. We're talking about the way that you design your company, the way you build the company, the way you set up the finance for the company, the way you manage the company. When people want to know why companies grow and why they do not, they fail to talk about these important topics and just get caught into customer demand and marketing. That is not even a piece of it. It's a lot more. So I just want to say thank you for coming on as you always do. We'll continue to bug you to come on constantly because I think this discussion really demonstrated how much this stuff really matters. And I also, before I hand it to you, I want to make sure everybody knows that you are also an advisor at the SBDC through the Pasadena location. So you can contact Xiomara, and you also offer classes a bit. Or do you have any class coming up you want to mention?
Yeah, I do. We do have a workshop. This is a live workshop we're doing with along in partnership with the city of South El Monte. And I'm doing a workshop on the top five HR mistakes small businesses make. So I'm gonna drop the link in the chat
Please do.
there. If
I
you're
was just
able
gonna say,
to
please do.
attend, it is free, and free lunch as well. So
Ah,
more than more than happy to have people over. If you're able to attend, feel free. But also, as Lori said, if you do have questions you want to ask, just feel free to reach out to the SBDC as well. There should be the link to my link tree as well if you want to follow me on social media. My handle is at Solvit underscore HR on Instagram. And yeah, Lori, it's just a pleasure to be here. And I agree with you. We can talk hours. I'm just very passionate about the HR side of things and how that impacts the budget, or like that impacts the profits, because, in my eyes, is like, what really can make or break a business if you don't have the proper handle on it. So
you're a gem, Damari, a gem, an absolute gem. Pasadena
you.
is very lucky to have you as an advisor. I've said that again and again. I've talked with a lot of HR people, and you are definitely outstanding, way above the pack, way above the pack. Sadie, I'm going to
Wow.
bring you back in. I know.
I mean, literally, because what I find very interesting? It's like sometimes we get very like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like emotional, right? Like, we come more for like, how does like our emotion, mental health play into being a small business owner? But today it was all facts, 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 where I was like, dang, let's talk about some meat today.
We have been on a roll talking about leadership and, the mental health. Now I'm just slamming you against the wall with a bunch of facts. So true. Well, guys, we ran over. We got to go. So I want to say thank you so much to the frequent flyers for being here. Thank you to anybody new. This is very informative. As you know, check into further episodes. Sadie is going to stay behind as she always does. That will keep the chat open. You can get my information, Xiomara's information, check out her class, check out other things she does. And once again, be smart. Infrastructure matters. Processes matter. HR matter. That's why the solopreneurs are making the most money today. We'll talk about that again. And I will see everybody next week on Small Biz Talk with your host, Lori Williams. Bye,
Bye,
everybody.
everyone.
Bye, Xiomara. Bye,
Bye,
Sadie.
Lori.
Bye, guys. Alrighty, guys. You know the drill. I'm gonna hang out for a little bit and keep this chat active, keep the links going. I dropped a lot of information there for you. I know. But you know how it is. We thrive in this community here. So I got the survey going for you. So and we always enjoy those because we kind of want to hear how else we can help you, right? Because we formulate webinars at the SPDC off of what small business owners need. What information do you need? Regulations, forming businesses. I also dropped in the contact the SPDC today, as Lori's a small business advisor, Xiomara is a small business advisor. So get in touch with us. Get your free one-on-one appointment. We have many wonderful subject matter experts. So whoever your one business advisor is, you're not going to be just that's the person and that's it. No, no, no. We are a network. So kind of how Lori connected us with Xiomara, that's how it works when you become a client of the SBDC. We will connect you with that business advisor that you need at that moment for the, level process you are in your small business. So just check it out, go through the links. Thank you, everyone. I know we got crazy good information today where I'm just like, dang, we literally learned so much in the small business community, right? This is why we love the SPDC. But guys, let me see. Oh, I have a question for Maria. Can you give me the name again of this interview? Oh, well, you know what? Intervene? Intervene. Oh, I'm gonna go with Xiomara. You know what? Here is her Linktree information. And so if you click on this Linktree, it is going to give you all her info. So let me drop that in there for you, Maria. So click on that little guy and it'll, give her all the information. Spell check. Let's see. I know, I'm telling you, right? No, sometimes for me, I hate that autocorrect where I'm like, that's not even what I wrote, but you gave a different message there. I guess, okay, so we're gonna have that guy in there. Click on that link tree. Let's see, is there a way to provide a list of the trainings that small business with more than 10 employees need to require? You know what, Maureen? Why don't you drop an email so I can forward that to Lori? So I'm gonna have you do this in here. Do resources at smallbizla.org. Write that in an email. Be sure to write Lori's name in the subject line so that I can forward that along to her. Lori is great about responding to emails. So yeah, definitely keep in touch. Email us. I'm actually gonna hop over into that account right now and just kind of see what I got going on from you guys. So yes, email away, do a survey. Keep in touch. I mean, this is what we do. This is our passion, guys. So I'm gonna put myself on mute because I got a little dog that loves to bark when I open up the door. Yes, 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 yes. Write Lori's name in there because this is a shared email address because we have so many different webinars that we do. And so we just want to make sure that we get the question to the right business advisor after the webinar shuts down. Because after this one, I'm going to be hopping on a VBOC, and that is for our Veterans Business Outreach Center. So yes, let me put in the contact SBDC just in case you are not a client of the SBDC yet. It's free. And as you can tell, imagine talking to Lori Xiomara, and it's a one-on-one, no-cost business advising. That's why I strongly say if you're not a client of the SBDC, please sign up We do a lot of our appointments also virtually. So, sometimes you can go in, but I just definitely say become a client of the SPDC so you can get information in terms of like, are there grants? Are there things happening that are in your local county? You never know. Sometimes your city, local county will have special events happening that are great for a small business owner that are in that local county city. Oh, interviewee's name. Xiomara, Xiomara. Let me see what we have going on for you. I think if I click on her link tree, it should come up. Hang on one second. Let me click on her link tree for myself. Let's see. Oh, actually, she does not have that here, but let's see what her Instagram says. I think she's much more all about her business professional. So let me go on over here. I have my own little cheat sheet, going on. So let me check my emails because I know how sometimes we just want to put the person's name in there. So hang on one second. Telling you, we just call it a little bit of multitasking over here. So our speaker today was Xiomara Palma. So hang on one second. Do, 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 do. Yes, and she's also a small business advisor based out of our Pasadena center. So there you go. Yeah, so give us a call, say this is who you would love to talk to some more. She is a business advisor. So I'm just like, yeah. See, this is why we hang on afterwards, guys, so we can make sure that we have information going on, right? Alrighty, so I'm gonna put myself on mute because this little dog is ready for this door to be open. So let me know if you need anything else. Otherwise, have an amazing, amazing day. It is a gorgeous, beautiful day out there.